Hello, welcome back. It's Ask George. It's day two of the first test between England and Pakistan from Multan. George is phoning in. What was the best day? Day one or day two?
Um, Day two, probably. I don't know. It's been fun. It's lovely. I'm watching cricket. It was a little bit less warm today, but I can go to an air-conditioned box whenever, so it's not really a huge hardship for me. But I've enjoyed it. I think there's a long way to go in this game. It's like old school Test cricket, really.
Yeah, actually, I wasn't doing it because I thought it's been dull. Actually, I think it's been really interesting. I thought today was super interesting. I thought both teams were in it a lot more. There's a lot more nip and tuck than it was than perhaps it was yesterday when it was a little bit one way. I sort of thought it was really interesting though. Let's crack on with some questions then. Occidental Tourist asks, 4 consecutive matches for Pope as captain. How do you think he's doing?
As captain, I think he's okay as captain. I think England have obviously conceded a very large score here, but it is very, very flat. And their batters should be able to score something similar. I really think that. In the field, I mean, look, there's things that I would love him to do a bit differently. I would love them to be a bit more conservative at times, to dare to be dull. But he is captaining this side for a reason. He is seen as being in the image of Ben Stokes. So there's lots of things I like about him as captain, not least the fact that he, immediately put himself up to open when Ben Duckett was injured. No question, no excuses, no hiding. And I think that's quite typical of him. It didn't work out because he played, a higher risk shot than was possibly necessary. I'm not completely convinced by his batting. I'm not. But it's quite easy to construct Ollie Pope argument based on his statistics, which is very strong. To say that he is a good batter, and he's clearly a good batter. To say that he should be in the side, it's how many innings since he scored a Test century. But there are a lot of single-figure scores, and personally, I'm not convinced that he's England's best option at number three. And if Ben Stokes had been fit only as a batter in this game, I wonder if he'd have been the one to miss out. So I think there's quite a lot to like about him as a leader and as a character. I'm just not absolutely convinced by his batting right now. And I thought today he took, again, a slightly higher risk option. I mean, the ball was short, but not massively short. I mean, the fact is he was out. We can say it was a great catch, which it certainly was. And that's a bit unlucky, but he hit the ball close enough to a fielder to be out. That's a fact. And he didn't have to. I would like them to play a slightly less aggressive approach, but you're trying to teach a lion to be vegetarian. That's not the way these fellas are going to do it. And I think that's a bit of a mistake. And we saw the Pakistan apply a slightly different approach today. And we'll see which is more effective over the course of the game and the series. This game isn't over. England's best hope of winning, and yes, they can still win, is to bat past Pakistan, which will mean batting deep into the fourth day, and then, hoping the pitch has worn a bit and bowling them out cheaply in the second innings. It's possible. And to do that, they're going to have to bat with some aggression. So it's not completely ridiculous what he did today. He was a bit unlucky. I don't think today is the day to go for an Ollie Pope pile-in. But to answer the question honestly, I'm not convinced by his batting. His captaincy, I'm okay with.
Sushant asks, what do you think of Ollie Stone's selection for the tour and then not playing him in the first test? Now, Ollie Stone has returned home for his wedding, which is on Saturday.
Well, he hasn't yet.
He is returning home.
Yeah.
And was due to return in time for the second test. Although, as we understand it, I think he may well be. That would surely make him quite doubtful for that test if he's going to be getting married on the Saturday. What do you make of how the Stone thing has been handled?
Well, I think he's a fine selection in that I think he's deserved it. I don't blame him for not changing his wedding date. How many tests he played? 5? Over 5 years. What were the chances? He's putting family first. It's unfortunate but he's been open and honest, and that's the choice he's made, and I think that's fine. If he was going to play, it probably had to be the first test, didn't it? But I'm not sure when he leaves. You see, we've been told he might have to leave before the end of the first test. I don't know why they just don't just tell us his flight numbers, by the way. I mean, I guess there's security around it. There is a lot of security. You couldn't exaggerate how much security there is here. We go a different route to the ground every day. There are police down every sort of alley and side road. You know, they're looking after us beautifully. And so that will be the reason they're not giving us his exact flight details. But I'm not sure he doesn't go before the end of the first test and get back after the start of the second test. In which case, you need another bowler here, don't you? So as soon as Josh Hull was ruled out, which he did somewhat idiosyncratically through an interview with the cricketer, I think they should have called up reinforcements, because you're at the stage now where it's pretty hot, pretty flat. These seamers, you would think, are going to be quite weary. They might need freshening up. The attack might need freshening up. And the only option really would appear to be Matthew Potts, and that's fine, but that's only one bowler. And what if he, I don't know, turns his ankle in warm ups? It happens. Glenn McGrath, Edgbaston, 2005, all that. It does happen. So I think they need extra support here in their seamers. And I think they haven't thought it through properly.
Yeah, it feels like an odd one, doesn't it? They've come in with clearly a massive injury question mark over Ben Stokes. Even if he'd played in this Test match, that was obvious that existed.
So
Another
I saw
player
him
who,
bowl at tea.
yeah,
Saw him bowl at tea today. He doesn't look like he's going to bowl in the second test. To me, I could be wrong. It's a week away. Didn't look. We bowled 3 overs, I think, during the tea interval, and batted for ages. Batted for 45 minutes, I think, in the nets. His batting looks like it's going to be fine. It doesn't look particularly close as a bowler.
in the sense of going back to Ollie Stone. Yes, I think we agree. I think we reasonably agree that England should probably have brought an extra bowler, probably even when Josh Hull pulled out, let alone in this situation.
Yeah,
But also, but should Ollie Stone be on the tour at all? He, we know it was unlikely he might. It was be difficult for him to play the first test. Ideally, he probably doesn't really want to. Second test, probably not going to play, and then there's one left.
I think it's a fair question, but I don't have all the data. As I say, I suspect they're not giving us the exact dates because for security reasons, which is fine. So maybe they think he's available for 2 out of the 3, in which case then that's probably reasonable. If it is only one, if it is only the third, I think you'd have to say, yeah, I think you make a fair point. And that's something that I think we should clarify, but it might be something that we can only clarify when he's got back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Danny asks, will England avoid the follow-on?
Well, who knows? But I mean, they should. I'm pretty confident they will, yeah. It's pretty flat still. It might be doing a wee bit more. Well, 1 or 2 balls that kept a bit low, weren't there, today? But it's still pretty slow and pretty flat. And to be honest, Root, who I think needs, is it 30 odd more to become England's record test run scorer, and Zak Crawley in particular, batted with ease in the evening. So, long way to go, and lots can happen, but I think they should get past the follow on, yeah.
Okay, well, that brings the end of part one. We'll be back with part two, and we're going to kick off with Chris Woakes, George's special subject.
Subscribe to The Cricketer for just £3.99 a month to read all my reports from Pakistan and award-winning journalism and analysis from the team.
Okay, welcome back for part two, and Bobby Smith's going to kick us off with another question. Does the Woakes catch off Jack Leach go down as a drop?
No, I think that would be a simplistic word for it, because he didn't drop it, did he? And he might have made an absolutely brilliant catch. I was a bit surprised it was given not out, but I was the other side of the ground, and the TV is a wee bit grainy, so I couldn't be absolutely certain. But I was a bit surprised it wasn't given out. But no, I'd just say, hey, one thing he could have done differently. Should he have been back on the boundary? Should he have been 3 feet further back? Maybe even more than that. He'd come in a wee bit. And had he been, would it have gone to him in a more comfortable way? But he probably walked in as you're meant to, trying to stop two or whatever. It's difficult, isn't it? But I wouldn't put it down as a drop. No, I would. Life is sometimes more nuanced than these black and white descriptions.
Yeah, I mean, like 15 years ago, we're not even talking about this as an opportunity. This chance, or whatever you want to call it, would go viral just for the fact that he got anywhere near it. Now, the game, particularly in the white ball formats, has developed to such an extent that we see these catches not only attempted but also pulled off on such a regular
Yeah.
basis. I guess that's where sort of, although it's a slightly naughty question, the premise of it, I think, there is a relatively amount of fact in it, in the sense that we do see them. It was maybe an opportunity, maybe not a drop. I think is probably the fairer.
Maybe. I mean, I think he did brilliantly. Bearing in mind how much he'd been bowling, how tired he was, the difficulty in the opportunity, as he put it. I think he did brilliantly. I think it's like if someone drops an almost impossible chance in the field, which they made into a chance. I don't know. Is the word drop fair? I don't know that it is. Well, we don't have very good effective fielding stats, do we? I mean, you'll remember that Ben Foakes used to get penalised for chances that no one else would reach, and therefore they didn't count as drops. So it's an area of the game that is, we maybe need to think about and improve. But there was a chance today, a stumping chance today, which I'm pretty sure Ben Foakes would have taken, by the way.
Yes, indeed. JB, we're going to move on to their question. Are you aware of any notable differences or changes with Zak Crawley? It feels like he's gone from extreme pressure to being dropped to being one of the most reliable batters. Lest I remind you, George, I remember your pre-Ashes, you were slightly, I guess, scathing, and obviously he had a really good series, and then since then he's really, really kicked on. But from what you're seeing close up, are you seeing anything that has discernibly changed in the last, say, 18 months?
Yeah, what did you mean in his technique? Yes, he was getting closer to the ball. He was moving his front foot more and getting closer to the ball, and therefore not just wafting outside off stump. Also, I mean, he plays quick bowling very, very well. I mean, really, really
Mm,
well, and he his probably problem is, I guess, the moving ball, the laterally moving ball. But against anything but that, he's absolutely murderous, and he has been quite consistent since the start of the Ashes. You're right. Not many hundreds, I know, but a lot of
mm.
starts, and he does set the tone for the side. And I thought today he batted, I mean, about as well as he's batted, to be honest. He looked fantastic. He was back in Southampton or Manchester. He's played some very good innings for England.
Mm.
And I do think that he's worked on it a bit, and yeah, he gets closer to the ball. So I don't think it's just that the questions are, he's scoring fairly consistently and therefore justifying his spot in the side. I think it'd be a big blow to England if he didn't open in the Ashes. In Australia, you want Zak Crawley, I think.
Yeah, he looks really dreamy. Do you think he's developed? I remember one particular shot that there was an issue. I hate to use your words against you, but I do remember there was a lot of Crawley discourse around before the Ashes series. Was that he didn't really have a defensive shot or a very good one? Does he have that now?
I don't know. I mean, he can play straight, and he doesn't just try and
Mm,
smash every ball. But whether he can play the moving ball, he's not Raul Dravid, is he? But that's
mm,
not his skill. They've got different skills. So I don't think he has a particularly sophisticated defensive game, but he doesn't push at everything in quite the same way he did. He does seem capable of just sort of, I don't know, snuffing out the danger by playing straight and getting forward. So I think those things, as I say, are changes and improvements, and there'll be days when it doesn't work out. He is an unusual player in that the chasm between his his strengths are obviously huge, but there are some weaknesses. I don't know, I naturally think of someone like Frank Bruno, who had a fantastic punch, obviously, but he did have a bit of a glass chin. And there is a little bit of that about Zak Crawley. I think he'll always be, oddly, he'll always be at his most precarious in English conditions against the Duke's ball. He's probably least suited to being a Kent opener and most suited to playing fast bowling in Australia or South Africa.
I think Zak Crawley would be a very tricky opponent in a ring. I think quite tall, quite rangy.
Mm.
I imagine very few he wouldn't give many in terms of inches, both in height and in terms of his reach. I imagine is exceptionally good. I don't know how many sparring sessions the England cricket team, men's cricket team, do generally, but I think he would be tricky there.
And he's very
Let's move
fit.
on. Yeah, indeed, absolutely. Well, let's try it. Let's sign off with our last question. Nick, thank you for your question, Nick. Would England be the best team in the world if they had a solid trot-like number 3? That's all it takes.
Any team would be improved for having a really strong number 3. And for a few years there, when England were the best Test side in the world, for a year or two, Jonathan Trott was at his best, and that isn't entirely a coincidence. But their Graham Swan at his best too, and James Anderson, Stuart Broad somewhere near their best, and KP at his best, and quite a lot of other very, very good players. So really good teams have a variety of strengths in lots of positions. I'm not sure that England have a really, really strong number 3, and I'm not sure, they're still finding their way as a seam attack. I don't think anyone's saying that England are the best Test team in the world at the moment, are they? There's next year will define this team's record, really. They've got a hugely tough series against India in England, and then a really tough series Australia away, and they're really difficult sides, and they've got a lot to do in Pakistan yet. So let's see, but I do think there's room for improvement at number 3, but I don't want to constantly be having to go. I think there's so much to like about Ollie Pope. I wish Ollie Pope would go back to basics and be prepared to bat a bit like how Pakistan did today. Pakistan weren't negative, but they were. And I know Ollie Pope talks about absorbing pressure, but you don't actually see him do it very often. You see him play quite frenetically quite often, and sometimes it comes off. And when it does, it's brilliant because his ceiling as a player is very, very high, and you can understand why they want him to work out and why they want to stick with him, and I get all that. But my worry would be that he has been seduced into thinking this is the way he has to play, and even today, he could have left it. He could have rolled his wrists on it. I mean, people did used to do these things. But he seems to have been completely immersed in the methodology of this side, and you might think that's a really good thing. You could argue it's a good thing. But I think he's selling himself a bit short. But I'm not, again, I don't want to have a go at his captaincy because I like him as a leader. I think he puts himself in the positions that he doesn't ask anyone to do anything he's not prepared to do, whether it's fielding or batting or talking to the media or anything. I do like his leadership, actually. I think there's quite a lot to like there. And as I say, when there are things that make me a bit uncomfortable, it's just because he's following the ethos of this team. But I'm a bit worried about him as a number 3. And I'm glad to hear someone remembers how good Jonathan Trott was because it's quite a long time ago now. And obviously the story didn't end brilliantly, but it's probably still the best England Test team that I've seen in my lifetime. And they did amazing things, didn't they? Winning in India in 2012, winning in Australia in 10-11, and all the other things. So that's nice to hear that. Nice memory.